All
Hello
right.
and welcome. I am going to interview an up and coming star of the NPD YouTube community, NPD April. I got in first. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so hi guys, my name is April. You can find me on YouTube and Instagram as NPD April. Yeah, so I am diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Came onto social media because I was diagnosed with it and kind of was trying to get some support from friends. And basically what happened is just I just didn't really feel like I had a whole lot of support. A lot of people just didn't understand it, which could range from them like not understanding what NPD is, or like them thinking, oh no, you're like an abuser, like people like being afraid of it and stuff. So I felt kind of isolated when I first got diagnosed. But I found this really great community online. I started watching videos from YouTubers that had the diagnosis, and then from there, like found like Reddit, NPD, um, found some Facebook groups, and found Instagram. And from watching other people share their stories, that was really helpful for me, realizing there's other people that relate to things that I struggle with, and realizing that like really seeing it as like this is a mental health condition. It's not being an abuser. It's like it's a mental health thing. It's this thing people struggle with, and there's these people that relate to me in their struggles, and hearing their stories made me want to give back and share my stories, and so I started doing that, and I felt like that was really helpful for me, really therapeutic, and also just like a lot of fun, honestly, like getting to share. And I've been doing this for like only a little over a month now, but it's really been growing fast, and it's really awesome.
Yeah. Could you say more about your NPD diagnosis and how that came about, or how you realized that there was something along those lines going on?
Yeah, so I actually, for a while there was kind of quite a while where I didn't really have this community. There's a couple of years since I've gotten that. Like I got diagnosed in like getting at like 2019. Um, but what happened was, so back before then, I was in this relationship, and it was kind of a chaotic relationship on both ends, really. It was, like uh, my partner had BPD actually, so they were like having a lot of their own things. We were kind of triggering each other because we both had personality disorders, and that's kind of the nature of it, especially if you're not aware. And we tried doing couples therapy, I remember. And I was also having a lot of conflict with my parents at this time because I had like just come out as transgender, and like they didn't really know how they didn't know how to handle that. And also the way it came out was it came out online, which was like um a big shock for them. um so there was a lot of conflict going on in my life. So at that point I knew I needed to get into therapy. Uh and so now at this time I was going to therapy, just not really sure what for, just knowing that there was a lot of craziness in my life that I needed to sort out. And I just going into it kind of with the mindset of like blaming other people for my problems. And the way that it worked with my therapist, um, the way that she was able to get me to a place of being self-aware was at first was just kind of like dropping hints kind of about the fact that I have NPD. Like she would ask me questions like, why do you feel like you need people to admire you all the time and stuff like that? Or like she would ask me about like the symptoms, and then pieces started to come together. I was still like a little bit like uh not really wanting that diagnosis. So I was like a little bit scared of this. But there was this one girl who I was really close friends with, and I had a crush on her. So I remember, like, I was kind of hinting to this girl that I had a crush on her a lot, but like I was doing it in this way that was kind of like passive aggressive. And then with my therapist, like I told my therapist that I asked my crush out, and then realized like immediately like that I shouldn't have said that because I lied. So it was like this combination of all these things happening, and my therapist pointing them all out to me, and then eventually I had to come to the realization that like after hearing enough things, I'm like, okay, wait, do I really have NPD? Because it really sounds like I do. And then my therapist, that's when I got my diagnosis,
Mm.
was after there being enough evidence from enough things going wrong, you know. And when I first got diagnosed, I gotta say, like, you know, I was one of those people that was like in the communities of like the narcissistic abuse communities back in the day, like that would like, because I would blame other people for things, I would call other people narcissists. So as like a defense mechanism for
Yeah.
myself. So like I was in those communities a lot. Um, so to hear that I had NPD was like frightening to me at first, and I didn't want didn't want to believe it. Um,
At that point,
and it
what
was
did you
hard.
think in that early stage? What did you think
Yeah,
NPD was?
I thought NPD was just being a bad person. Like I thought
Mm.
it was just you were like purposely bad, purposely manipulative, um, purposely abusive, because that's the way that it's talked about in those
Mm.
communities. So I hear this from my therapist, and I think, so that's what I am. Like that's really upsetting to me.
Mm.
Um, so my first reaction with getting that diagnosis was like isolating myself. Like I remember for like a good couple of like probably like a month, just like being in my room all the time, not talking to people much because I'm like, I'm gonna hurt people. Like this isn't good. Um, and I went through kind of like phases, because I went through a phase of like I'm the worst to like I had this other phase where I was like, actually, this makes me like really special. Like I'm like the best. And then I came out of that, and then kind of have had a more balanced thought about it. That like, you know what this is? It's a mental illness. It's a collection of symptoms. Like realizing that and learning that through my talking about the symptoms with my therapist. My therapist really helped me get out of the mindset that like I'm just a bad person or something. Like my therapist helped me realize that I'm someone with a mental disorder, that I have these defenses that I learned in order to cope with, an abusive childhood, basically, um, and that they can be changed, and that they're
Mm.
not necessarily inherently like these evil things. They're what I learned, and they're coping skills that I can change.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, and I agree with that. It's like you have this kind of history, and
Hmm.
because of your history, which we can talk more about, you have these kind of
Yeah.
defenses, these ways to manage
Uh-huh.
uncontrollable, overwhelming situations,
Yep.
and they work.
They do. And in an abusive situation, I mean, in situations with parents who might be like emotionally abusive or neglectful, which my parents were often, I felt like I need to find ways to cope with this situation. And I'm a kid, so I'm not gonna come up with like the best coping skills. Like a little kid, I'm
Mm.
just gonna do whatever I can think of. So for me, those coping skills were hiding, um, and they were like hiding my emotions a lot of times. Um, and lying was a coping skill, because it was I mean, that's I think that's what I think. My theory is that's what people, when they talk about like having a false self,
Mm.
it's really, it comes out of you telling a bunch of lies about yourself to protect yourself. You basically make a false self that way. And then when you start to become more comfortable with who you are, that's how you can stop lying and be your true self that way, and stop hiding parts of yourself. And
Yeah,
that also helps you be your true self.
yeah. Because I'm thinking about that moment where you lied to your therapist and you're like, yeah, I asked the girl out. What
Yeah.
what drove the lie? Because I think people will be like, see, narcissists in therapy, tricking the therapist. And I'm
Yep.
that's a
So
overly simplistic way to look at it.
exactly. My thought was like, my the session before that with my therapist was me and her were talking about the girl that I have a crush on, and like she was really like hyping me up to do this. She's like, just, you just gotta be vulnerable, let her know how you feel, and either way it'll be okay. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna do this. And in my mind I was like, if I don't do this, I'm really gonna let my therapist down. Like my therapist's gonna be really disappointed in me. And I felt the need, like I couldn't do it. I met with my crush, and like I got too nervous and couldn't like tell her how I felt. So I go to my next therapy session and feel like really down on myself. And I felt like so uncomfortable with telling the truth. It's like a visceral like feeling of like I feel so uncomfortable with telling her the truth, because that's not been my coping skill. My coping skill has been to impress people, to get them to like admire me. So like I'm like, I feel like my only option, because it's what I've learned, is to lie. It's not because I'm like a bad person or trying to like manipulate her. It's this thing I do out of fear, you know.
Mhm. Yeah. So it's
And then
driven
just like,
by fear and it's protecting you from your therapist thinking you've let her down.
yeah, yeah. And it's a lot of it really is in my head. I mean, and that was what I learned later on. Was I was able to get outside of it, but like initially it really felt like that. It felt like my therapist is going to be so disappointed in me. I don't, you know. Um, when I apologized for like the lie, like my therapist was like, just be honest. Like that's gonna like, if you do tell a lie, just be honest, because I won't be disappointed in you. I'll be more proud of you for telling the truth. So like that reassurance helped
Mm.
a lot. And I don't know if like that's some advice that somebody else could take if they have like a narcissist in their life, is like reassure them that like it's safer to tell the truth than to lie, because their defense mechanism is to lie.
Mm. And I think sometimes as well, it's like it's really automatic for some people with NPD. It's so well practiced. They tell the lie and
It
they're like,
is.
oh, shit, I told the lie. And then it's like,
Yep. Yes, and you realize it afterwards. That's what it is for
yeah,
me.
but then it begins to build up, and you can't break that
Hmm.
pattern because to break the pattern, you have to go, I've lied.
Or
I'll
yeah, or I've lied
this.
a lot, because I've had this happen. Like one of my exes, I I had a I was kind of changing career. This is when I was changing careers from social work into like art stuff, and I couldn't find any art jobs, so I got like a job in a warehouse. And so I told when I was with my ex, like I told her that I got a job doing some kind of art thing or whatever, and then she found out the name of the place that, because she knows the name of the place that I worked at, and she like looked into it and what it was. I was like, oh yeah, but I'm doing art for it. And then I'm like, okay, I have to like lie to cover up a lie to cover up a lie, and then eventually you get completely screwed
Mm,
because then it comes down like a house of cards, you know? Mhm.
yeah, which is humiliating.
It is.
And
Yeah.
yeah, where did your NPD come from? Do you think?
Yeah, so I'll tell that story. So, you know, when I was a kid, I was always very, um, and I focused a lot on like lying specifically here, but another big part of NPD is just hiding my emotions and stuff like that. As a kid though, I used to be pretty darn like open about my emotions and like not have that a lot of these problems, like I remember as a little kid, I used to like sing to people randomly and stuff like that. And I'm like, wow, I used to be like so open compared to how I am now. Um, but so my NPD has a lot to do with hiding the fact that I was trans and that it wasn't acceptable when I was a kid to be trans. Um, Basically, when I was a little kid, I would have all these like little memories. Like I remember one time being at a party and like seeing one of my I saw my friend's bedroom and how girly it was, and I was like, I want a bedroom like that. That was like one of my earliest memories. And then another memory is from when I was 8 years old, and there's all these plates at McDonald's for the Hercules movie when that had come out. So there was a plate that had Pegasus on it, and it was very like feminine looking. Um, and I was like, I've been feeling that I feel like a girl. Like I've been having these feelings and these thoughts. I need to tell someone. Um, and this is an opportunity to tell my dad that I feel this way. So I'm going to tell him that I want this feminine Pegasus plate. And when he naturally questions it, it's going to be a way for me to say, I feel like a girl. So we go to McDonald's and I say, I want that plate. And he goes up to the counter and he comes back with a different plate. It's a plate with Hercules on it, and it's like Hercules flexing his muscle, looking really masculine and stuff. And I'm like, oh my god, what happened? Like, I'm like, kind of upset. What's going on? And he said, oh, they actually didn't have the Pegasus plate that you wanted there. They don't have it, so I got you this one instead. And I was, kind of bummed at first, but then when we were leaving the McDonald's, I got up and I saw at the counter that they did have the Pegasus plates, and he lied to me about it. So
Oh, it's like
in that moment, yeah,
that's a big message, isn't it?
yeah, it's a big message to me that it's not safe to be yourself. It's not okay. So that there was the big two realizations I had there was number one, like I have to hide these feelings and I felt like I had to hide all of my feelings because I'm a kid. I don't really know. I just know I expressed my feelings and it wasn't safe, so I have to just hide um, because I'm gonna be hurt, and people are gonna do hurtful things to me if I'm open and honest. And then the other thing was is that like that was where my lying started because I was like, if he can do it and he gets to do it and get away with it, then like I guess I feel like I should be able to too. It's almost like this like uh this almost revenge thing, almost honestly.
Yeah, what did you take? You kind of you've taken from that incident, and I imagine that incident is probably emblematic of what was going on more generally, both within your family, maybe also I'm thinking Hercules, this would have been what, the 90s?
Yeah, yeah. So I was growing up in the '90s in this the culture of the '90s, like it wasn't safe to be transgender.
Mm.
Um, and being transgender was like this thing that beyond like age 8, like I'm a kid. I'm like getting older and like I'm watching movies and I see in movies like transgender people are always like the butt of the joke. They're always like laughed at. So I mean, it's just kind of reinforcing to me by seeing this stuff on TV that like it's not okay to
Mm,
be who I am. I have to keep hiding it and repressing it.
yeah.
Um, there's a lot there. Like there was a lot of shame and like this fear that even if I tell my friends what's going on, they're gonna laugh at me. Or if I tell my therapist, what are they gonna think? So there was always like a. This actually, I haven't said this on anything yet, but I had a lot of therapists when I was younger, where I would go to therapy until the point where I felt like it was starting to come out that I'm transgender, and then I would leave the therapist and ghost them because I'm like, well, I don't want them to know that, so I'll
Yeah.
just move on to the next therapist because it's like not safe.
It's like extreme hiding, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So there was never I could never get past that point of healing because I
Mm.
always like got stopped there. Um, and it affected my romantic relationships too, because like I knew that I knew who I was on the inside, and um, I couldn't be real with the person. I'm attracted to women, but any of the women that I've been with, I haven't I wasn't able to like be fully open with them um, about the fact that I'm trans. I still struggle with the NPD stuff, and we can get into that too. But yeah, like knowing that I'm trans on the inside and having to hide that was really just it meant there couldn't be like a real true connection.
No, because they're not getting to know you. You're
Hmm.
hiding this big part of you.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep, exactly. And like there was always that fear that they're like gonna break up with me or something.
Yeah. And I think if I was putting that into kind of, I suppose as a therapist, I'm thinking as a schema therapist, if I put that into schema therapy language, I mean, that's like a
Uh,
big defectiveness shame schema that I can't be acceptable as I am. I'm going to be rejected. I'm going to be
yeah.
abandoned, or I'm going to be criticized.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
the way to cope is to kind of build up this false self image,
Yep.
at least deny, hide, withdraw, avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Are there other
So hiding
defenses?
everything. Uh, are there other defenses? Did you say?
Mm.
Um, yeah, yeah. Uh, I definitely have an avoidant attachment style, which, if anyone doesn't know what that is, it's like, like my defense when there's conflicts in relationships and stuff is always to like, I have to hide myself, I have to isolate myself from the other person if I feel there's a conflict, which causes problems in relationships, especially like if I'm dating someone with an anxious attachment style. They want to know what's going on, why I'm like isolating, and I'm isolating to recharge, but then they start like coming after me to know why I'm isolating, and then it just causes this huge
I
conflict.
mean, that's worth explaining that the person with a more anxious attachment style, and if you get the
Hmm.
approach to the extremes of that, you can have someone with borderline personality disorder, where one of the
I
features is the fear of abandonment.
Yep, yep. And
With a person
if I'm
who,
hiding, I'm making them feel abandoned because they're like, why are you withdrawing from me? Are you abandoning me? So it's like it like puts that fear into them.
yeah. And then how is it for you when they pursue?
It's like frightening because I'm trying to recharge. Like I'm definitely like when I'm isolating, it's like I'm so stressed out already. Like I'm feeling anxious and amped up and all these things. So I'm trying to get away so that I can like get back to like homeostasis almost. And I feel like if I can do that, if I have time to do that, then I can come back into the relationship and talk it out better.
Mhm.
But I feel like I'm not being allowed to do that when somebody's coming after me. I feel like it's just amping me up even more sometimes, especially if they're coming at me and telling me I'm stressed out that you're eating, and then it gets me into like really stressed out. I don't know. Sometimes it makes me isolate even more, or sometimes it makes me eventually like fight back.
Hmm. Yeah. What does it look like when you fight back?
Uh, so I'm rarely like the kind of person that I will like yell or like get mad. Like this is why I feel like I lean at least more towards like the vulnerable narcissist side,
Mhm.
because when I'm mad, I tend to be passive aggressive more than like aggressive aggressive. And maybe it's like, um, maybe like I kind of say something indirectly, or maybe I don't do something I'm asked. Sometimes like on like social media, I've been guilty of that, where like I'll post something where it's about the person and I want them to see it, but I'm not going to tell them it. I'm just going to have them see it in some post, like passive aggressive post that I made. So like that kind of stuff is, and like passive aggressiveness is a lot more common for me than
Mhm.
like over aggressiveness, unless you like somebody really, really keeps pushing.
Mm.
Yeah.
How how's therapy been or treatment been for you?
Uh, it's I've had a lot of different types of therapists, so I've had good and bad experiences over the course of the time. That therapist that diagnosed me was great, and I think she was great in making me like self-aware. Um, and then, but the problem is like once I got like self-aware, like with her, she made me super self-aware, but then I was kind of like beating myself up a lot.
Mhm.
That was my first problem. And then I had another therapist who was like more just very like validating, and I felt like that's what I kind of needed at that time, because I needed somebody to make me realize that like I'm okay as I am and not just constantly beat myself up. Like I need somebody to like just be like, it's okay to make mistakes. You're a person. You're a normal person. And I think those were my two best therapists, because they like helped me kind of like
Mm.
balance myself out. I've had other therapists where like it's been bad experiences. Like I had one who just like kind of kept canceling appointments, so like that was not really that great. Um, I haven't had a therapist for a little while now, but I'm gonna be starting with one next week with a new one, so I'm hoping that goes well. I like looked up one who specialized in NPD and who was LGBT friendly, so I was really trying to like get the perfect therapist.
Yeah, who doesn't exist?
Yeah.
I always that because sometimes
I,
now because I've
I
got
was trying to get as close as I could. I'll say that.
a lot of people find me now on podcasts or on YouTube, and I think it's been it's been a blessing and a curse to have a reputation for being good with NPD, because sometimes
Yeah.
people with NPD are like, you are going to be the therapist,
Oh
right?
my God.
You are going to be the
You,
ideal
you're
therapist,
yeah,
right?
they idealize you.
Yeah, and you know what? That's a little enticing. I'm like, oh yeah, intoxicating. Like, oh yeah, I'm good. And the thing is, I also know I'm good. I genuinely, I'm good with cluster B patients. That is something I'm just
Yeah, I'm sure you've
naturally.
had a lot of practice with it and stuff.
Yeah, but I
Seems
I
like
had an affinity to it from the beginning. Some people, it's
there's like a
not
barrier you had to
their
get
client group,
through.
and
What's that?
for some people, this is not their client group. This is not the people they should
Yeah.
work with. And for other people, it really
Yeah,
is.
you're right. It's some people it's just natural for them.
Yeah. And
Like
you have to hone your
there's
natural skills.
absolutely, you should work with whatever population you're the best at working with. Like some
Yeah.
people are really good at working with kids, some people are really good at adults, some people, everyone's like got their specialty. And
Mm,
um I think that's so true. Like you gotta find your population
yeah.
in that field,
Yeah. But then I also have
Um
to say to them, I'm a good therapist, but I'm also an
yeah,
ordinary therapist.
right, right.
I will mess
You have
up.
to right, because the cluster Bs, I mean, I think it's true of all the cluster B disorders is like like we tend to like idealize people, and we forget that they're gonna that I mean you may specialize in something, but you're gonna make mistakes too sometimes. So it's
Yeah, and you're just
and
going to be human.
hmm
Sometimes I don't quite understand you. Sometimes I'll say something in a clumsy way, or I'll make a mistake,
yeah,
or I'll push too hard. Um,
yeah,
and those are ruptures we can work through. And then the flip side is also, you know what, you have lots of motivation and you really want to be here, and I can see how committed you are to this. But you're also
uh-huh,
going to be an ordinary client or an ordinary patient, whatever word you prefer.
uh-huh,
You are not going to be super engaged every session. And sometimes you're going to be bored. And sometimes you're not going to do the homework. And sometimes you're going to lie. Sometimes you're going to find yourself
yeah,
doing those things with me. And that's okay too.
uh-huh,
You know,
yeah,
that's,
yeah. So I guess it's like that's a way of like not for like us like cluster B people. It's like that's a way of us not being so hard on ourselves. I know I'm a perfectionist. I'm always like if if I didn't do well in a therapy session, if I didn't do well in like a conversation in general, I'll beat myself up.
yeah.
you know?
Perfectionism is so high in NPD, as
hmm
is that
Definitely.
kind of very strong inner critic.
Yeah.
Sometimes not obvious
And I
because
have
it's it's not what comes out. The person doesn't always say, I'm beating the shit out of myself. What the person sometimes says is, thanks
yeah.
for making me feel that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been through like a lot of therapy, so like I'm able to say these things that I have a tendency to beat myself up and I have a bad inner critic and stuff. But like I think a less self-aware narcissist, like they're going to like just say like I'm the best because they don't want to admit that. Like that's the defense mechanism is like you want to be seen as perfect. So you don't want to admit that you beat yourself up all the time and stuff.
Yeah, it's painful. Yeah.
hmm
And I think it's also one of the, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, but I think when people become more self aware and they start to recognize narcissism in themselves,
hmm
I do think there is a kind of almost like a second blow of the stigma. And okay, you struggle with being true to yourself, you hide yourself. Maybe you are
Yes.
hypercritical of other people and defensive. Maybe you're grandiose and entitled, and therefore you're the greatest monster in the world. It's like that
That's
bit's not
a
necessary.
100% what I deal with right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like you get the
When I
first blow of,
realize that I'm acting like when I'm realize I'm acting like a narcissist, when I do something selfish, self-absorbed or whatever, then I beat myself. I'm like the worst person. I like talk to myself that way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's almost like and then like you said, like I'm trying to like hide my symptoms of it from people. So that's another way that I'm being really like critical of myself is like I'm not allowing myself to make any mistakes. I'm not
Mm.
like letting any room for that.
Yeah. And I think it can create an enormous amount of overthinking and hyper analyzing. Like I've had so
Uh-huh.
many, so many
That's
people I've worked with who have kind of NPD or narcissistic traits, and they'll be like, I did a nice thing, but really it was very selfish. And I did it for myself.
uh-huh.
And it's like, we all have mixed motivations.
right, but like yeah, at the end of the day, you did the nice thing, so it's like,
Right.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to like tell myself that too sometimes. Um, like I guess like even if you do something nice for someone, like you may be doing it for a selfish reason, but like at the end of the day, you made that person feel good. So it's the same thing as being like in a way as being selfless, you know,
Yeah. You
or
can,
similar. I
you
don't
can
know.
just relax and enjoy the relationship. You don't need to
Yeah,
second guess every motivation.
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
so like another thing for me is like in my relationships, like my last one, I haven't really had uh any like really like serious like dating relationships for a while. My last one was like 2020, so it's been a while. But I remember like when I was with her, like one of my big struggles was like that was when I had first gotten like self-aware that I had NPD. I think maybe now would be maybe more easier for me to like admit it to a partner. But that was like, you know, I was still like pretty newly self-aware. So that was an interesting struggle I had in that relationship was is that like I knew what I was doing and I knew that like I knew when symptoms were coming out, but there was still like a barrier in our relationship because like I wasn't able to fully explain why I'm doing the things that I'm doing because I still wasn't able to really like admit I had NPD because I was afraid that if I admitted that she was gonna like want to break up with me or something. So I would still act out certain behaviors and it would be hurtful in a way that maybe like we could have worked it through if the communication was like even better. So like that's something it's like ever since then I think that's been on my mind a lot is like I'm hoping that I guess that in my next relationship I can like I won't have that problem. I don't know. It's something I think about a lot.
You'll have challenges.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those close relationships will bring out any vulnerabilities that are there. That's just,
It's natural.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious as well, like for your experiences of therapy,
Uh-huh.
what made them helpful to you? And do you think you've changed? Do you think you've grown?
I definitely have. I think going through like the phases I went through actually did help me too. Like, cause like so I was kind of like saying this a little before. Like I had this first stage where I was like hypercritical, but during that stage I was becoming very super self-aware, at least. I was realizing a lot about myself. Then I had this stage where I was like really like almost like grandiose and like thinking like maybe having NPD is like the best thing in a way. But during that phase, I started to gain maybe more self-acceptance. And then on the and then after those two phases, there was like this like phase where I was like, my focus was on trying to balance out how I viewed myself, and I'm still kind of there, I guess maybe, but like um so that's one of the ways I've grown though is being able to realize that um be aware of my flaws that I wasn't aware of previously, but realize that it's okay to have them and it's okay to make the mistakes and stuff. So that's one thing. Um, and then as far as like coping skills, you know, having I'd say like the two biggest ones for me definitely are making music and having this community that I have here.
Yeah. So it sounds like you kind of had a bit of a journey from kind of recognizing some of your flaws, some of the things that
Hmm.
made it difficult.
That was almost like blind to before.
Yeah. Through the kind of self-criticism into much more acceptance of yourself.
Hmm. Yeah.
And how does music help you?
I think actually like the first, like one of the first, in a lot, it helped me in so many ways. Like one of the first like um things was like listening to songs that were like kind of like um songs that like built me up a lot, like that made me feel really good about myself, it made me feel really confident, especially in that really early on low point where I was feeling really down about the fact that I had this disorder. Listening to music that was really like uplifting made me start to like just love myself again, accept myself. Um, but I think there's a place for like sad music too. You know, in those times when I've been feeling really down, listening to sad music gives me something to relate to, just the same way like that this community always gives me something to relate to. Um, and think it's similar to like the way that like, you know, it's actually kind of similar to the journey with the community that like, you know, I was listening to the videos and then started to make my own because the video, like the videos I was watching were helping me. It's kind of the same thing with music where like I was listening to this music that was helping me a lot, getting through a lot of stuff. And then I decided to make my own because it allows me to express myself. Um, also just kind of helps me get out of my head a lot too. Just like focusing on playing a guitar is going to make me stop thinking about all this other like chaos. And if my life is going badly, I'm not going to think about it because I'm just going to be thinking about what's the next chord to play on the guitar, you know?
You know, it's interesting because it sounds as well like in both the music and within the community, um,
Hmm.
and hearing other people share their stories, you're almost having the experience of empathy. It's like, yeah, I recognize my
Hmm.
emotions in that song, and I recognize
Yeah,
experiences in this person's story. It's like you get that
yeah,
resonance.
yeah. For I gotta say, for myself, like, um, there's times where like if there's somebody that I really if first of all if it's a time where like things are really calm in my life, it's easier for me to be like empathetic if I'm not in the middle of a conflict. If I'm in the middle of a conflict, it can be hard because I'm overwhelmed by my emotions and it's hard for me to be empathetic. But I really do think like when I'm like just kind of at like base level, or if I'm like just kind of alone, just listening to a song, it's easier for me to like actually get there and be empathetic. Also, if it's somebody I really care about, like um I'll say it like Tessa that's in this community, like just posted like her therapy video and like it got me really emotional. Like I was actually like crying when I was listening to it. So like that felt like real like emotional empathy. Like if I care enough about a person, I can feel empathy. And I do think that that comes like there might be a lot of things. There could be like just that like narcissists tend to have just lower empathy and less empathy, not necessarily no empathy like people say. Um, and also like empathy is only one of the symptoms of NPD, like not of having low empathy. So maybe it's not even a symptom that everybody with NPD has, you know?
No, it's true. I was thinking more like you're getting the experience of empathy and understanding, and that you're seeing what
Maybe
you.
that is helping me develop it.
I think it's true. As how else does anyone
I
develop
think
empathy
so.
other than by being empathized with? And
I think so.
yeah, that's
Yeah, yeah.
that's my experience of therapy with people with NPD or traits of NPD. When it goes well, like you can't teach it. Like I can't go, okay, right, sit down and empathize. But
Mhm.
gradually, as they get more self-acceptance and they have the experience of being understood and being accepted as they are, that naturally seems to lead to more empathy and more openness to other people.
That makes sense. And that would make sense first, like why listening to that music has made it easier for me to be empathetic. It also totally makes sense why like somebody like Tessa who makes videos about NPD made me feel heard, so then it was easy for me to be empathetic to her.
Mm. I'm
That those
always
kind of experiences help like open up to empathy and make that actually makes a lot of sense.
I'm always amazed because I've obviously I follow Tess, Spirit Narc, uh,
Hmm.
Nameless Narcissist,
Hmm.
Cluster B Milkshake, Early Morning Barking. Sorry to anyone I've missed out, but the, the amount of empathy that they have for each other,
Yeah,
and the
we
kindness that they have
do.
for each other,
Hmm.
and it's like
Yeah.
big bad narcissists. Not really.
Uh-huh. No, we got each other's backs.
Yeah.
I feel that. Um, that's kind of like what I was saying earlier. Is like I feel like sometimes I feel like the like a the narcissistic abuse community can actually sometimes seem less empathetic than this cluster B community because we're all like this cluster B community. It's like just all of us helping each other and like building each other up and supporting each other. You know,
Mm,
like it feels really nice, and we do have empathy for each other. We do like have each other's backs when something bad happens.
yeah.
I've
Yeah.
seen that too with them with each other. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm also thinking as well, if you what do you wish people knew about NPD?
My biggest thing, because it was the thing that helped me accept myself. So I think it's something that would help other people accept people with NPD. My biggest thing is make that switch from seeing it as a person who's being abusive intentionally. Some like using like people use narcissist as a synonym for abuser, which may not even be like the case. They use it as a synonym for abuser when really the way that people should look at narcissistic personality disorder is it's a mental health disorder, just like depression is, just like social anxiety is, just like whatever is. If you can look at it as a mental health disorder, then you can start to be more empathetic towards it. You can be less like um, you can get to a place where you can start to empathize with them and like understand them, and then like be less hateful, and the stigma will go away. I think.
Yeah, because how do you think the stigma around NPD affects you?
It makes it so. It makes it so like I feel like I right now I feel like I live like a double life kind of because I there's another thing I haven't said in any videos or any interviews or anything, but I do feel like I live a double life where like I have like my NPD channel, my NPD Instagram where I feel like I can just freely talk about anything, you know, any of my symptoms or any of that. And then I have another page because I have like a solo music project called Violent Melody. Shameless plug right there. But like that's my other Instagram, right? And that's the one that I have like my friends from high school on there. I have my mom on there. I have all these people from my life on there. And I feel like I could talk about music on there all day long, but I could never talk about these symptoms of NPD that I deal with on a daily basis because I feel like it's not safe to, because I don't want to talk about this stuff on my page that has all my friends on it and then they don't want to be my friends anymore. That's like I've literally had experiences where like I've told friends I have NPD and then they don't want to be my friend anymore.
Mm,
Yeah.
I mean, that hurts. That is
Hmm.
very hurt. And it's because you've
Yeah.
told them the diagnosis rather than because of something you've done.
Yep. Literally that. Like never, like nothing happened yet in the relationship. It's just there's one friend I'm thinking of in particular that just like that's exactly how it happened, you know.
Ouch.
Like she's like, I don't think we can hang out anymore. And that's it.
Yeah,
You know? And that hurts.
yeah, yeah.
So I worry about people like just not wanting to be my friend like that. And then I also just worry that like people, even if they don't want to cut me out of their life, like they're gonna start talking about me, maybe like talking about me behind my back, or like they're gonna just start like distancing themselves from me, or like being suspicious of me. I had that experience too, where like I've told people in my everyday life that I have NPD, and then they just start getting really suspicious of everything I'm saying. Like, is there a secret meaning underneath it or something? Like, are you secretly being manipulative to me? I'm like, no, I'm just being
Yeah.
me. You know?
It creates that overthinking actually in everyone. And it's like,
Yeah.
I often think like a little bit of grandiosity, for example, being happy, you know,
Yeah.
it's a little
Like,
slice of life. And
yeah, like I had this like one recent thing was like I told one of my, so I'm like really, really, normally I try super hard to never ever tell coworkers, because that's like, it's coworkers. I don't want to tell them about it. But I had this one coworker, I just like have a pretty close relationship with her. Um, and I told her that I have NPD, and like then I remember like uh she thought she had heard a customer walk into the store, and I was there, I was right in front of the door, so I said, no, nobody's walked in. And she goes, okay, are you sure you're not gaslighting me? Like that's what she asked me, and like I'm like, no, I'm not. I literally didn't see anyone. But that's like the kind of suspicion that comes out in people, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And I think it kind of it's very stifling, and you feel like you have to
Hmm.
police everything you do. And I'm like, God, we all need a little bit of
I feel like I have to like put on a show sometimes. Like
yeah,
still, like I still feel like I can't truly be myself sometimes. Like
yeah,
I feel like on my music page, like I can let myself out through my lyrics, which I definitely do. But like in general on my music page, I never like really mentioned that I have NPD. um, I feel like I have to just kind of put on a show for people and never share that side of myself because it's not safe, you know.
mm, yeah,
Whereas on the the NPD page, I can show everything.
yeah. But it's such a double bind because you can't be free to express yourself if your
Hmm.
every move is being monitored and policed. And I'm also thinking for
Hmm.
someone like you as a performer, right?
Hmm.
What
Yeah,
you
like
perform, you
like
do well and you're pleased with yourself? Are you being grandiose?
what's that?
If you perform and you're pleased with yourself, you're proud of yourself, is
Yeah,
that you being grandiose? You
right.
start
I
to
mean, that's a normal
overthink
human thing.
everything.
Is like, hey, I did a good show, and people are applauding me. Like, anyone would be happy for that, you
Yeah.
know.
But I've seen this reaction as well, where when someone has NPD, people who were
Mhm.
applauding will be like, stop applauding, you're giving them supply.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
no,
Okay.
it's
Oh,
normal to
there's something I
applaud.
gotta say about that too.
Go on.
Like, this is something I don't like. Is like people are almost like afraid to compliment me when I tell them I have NPD, and
Mhm.
it's like compliments are actually what I need, because if I like, it's the same way like people like for example, like people with BPD, they need a lot of like reassurance. But with NPD, we need a lot of praise. I think it's the same thing, really, but it's just that it's stigmatized to give someone with NPD praise, because it's seen as like you're making them like more narcissistic or something. But actually, you're just making them happy, because if you don't do that, like when I get like, if I just get criticism and never get any praise, like I just feel like terrible. I feel like clinically depressed, like really bad and really low, you know? And sometimes a compliment can pull me out of that, which is why that stuff is helpful.
Well, and it's human to give compliments on occasion.
Yeah, everyone needs positive praise. Everyone needs to hear that.
Yeah, and what if you could advise someone who was close to someone with NPD, how how could they compliment and praise and give that kind of positive reinforcement without kind of propping up the grandiosity.
Uh, I guess remind them of their humanness in some way.
Mhm.
Like that way it won't get to their head. Like remind them that you did so good. You're not like I don't know, you like if I played a show, you did like so good. I mean, you know, um maybe they're I don't know. I mean, maybe like if you were to say like you did a good job, nobody's perfect, but you did a great job, and I think I'm like really proud of you or something like that. Maybe that
Mhm.
would be just like a nice way to do it in a balanced way. I think it's the same thing with criticism too. Like if you're gonna criticize someone with NPD, like I really like advocate for like the sandwich technique of like you give a compliment, then give the criticism in the middle, and then give the compliment at the end, like a second one at the end, because then they're able to hear it more without feeling attacked.
Yeah. Sometimes when I've worked with, it'd be interesting to get your take on this, because I've just done this
Hmm.
intuitively. When I've worked with
Yeah.
couples or with people, I'll talk about when you give the praise, remember, it's like there's something, what's often missing is a sense that someone can be really happy for you and
Uh-huh.
genuinely pleased for you. So it's less about admiration, like, look at you, you're so amazing. It's more like, wow, you really did your thing, and I saw how much you enjoyed it, and I am so happy for you. Like, you should write
So
you.
it's like that it's that's interesting. It's like because like my one of my biggest things with like when people criticize me is my tendency to take it personally and take it as the criticism that defines who I am. I think it's the same thing with praise. Like with I think with what you're saying, it's the same thing with praise, where like I have to not take on the praise as necessarily who I am, but like what I did was a good thing. Because
Yeah,
then I can maybe like if I don't take it too far in the personal direction where that it like makes me feel grandiose. Maybe. I don't
it's
know.
to me, the way I'm thinking about it, it's like losing the hierarchy.
Yeah.
It's like I don't love and appreciate you because you've been super successful in this area.
Uh-huh.
I love and appreciate you anyway, but I do admire
And
what
you've
you've
done
done, and you've done great, and you're so proud of yourself, and I'm happy for you.
I like that.
Which
I
is,
like
and
that a
it's
lot.
also like, it's not like I envy you. It's like I'm happy for you. I share in
Yeah.
your joy and I share in your pride.
And
Because
I'm
that,
thinking about someone giving me a compliment like that, and that actually feels better than like the that it actually feels warmer and nicer than like a compliment that's just like you're the best. you know?
yeah,
Which that actually kind of blows my mind because I wouldn't think that I would feel that way about a compliment like that. Like I almost like assume that I need people to admire me, but that way that compliment sounded felt really nice.
mm, that's the kind of ethos of it, in my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah, I like that. Wow.
Is there anything else you'd like to say, or anything you think we should cover that we haven't covered?
Yeah, just the only other thing I'd want everyone to know is just that like people with NPD are people just like anybody else, and we just need to be we have our flaws, but we need to be like accepted for who we are, and we need to be treated like we need to be treated like people. That's what I would
Yeah.
like say.
Yeah, and I think that's also the kind of heart of like really healing from NPD is seeing yourself as human
It
and
is.
feeling
It's seeing myself as
comfortable as human.
it's seeing it that it's okay to be myself, and
Yeah.
if somebody can, and I think like just like for other people, like if they can like show me that love, that if they can like show me that it's safe and okay to be myself, it can help that because it can make me feel like it's okay to be myself, and then gain that self acceptance and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, even you saying that makes me, I can imagine there will be some who will respond to that with, what do you mean narcissists should be themselves? They need to change.
I mean, I mean, I mean the real person. Like I'm talking about, the person underneath the disorder.
That you have.
That's, and I'm talking about, I mean, yes, I think it's important to know that I'm a person that, just like anyone else, I make mistakes, and sometimes my disorder does make me make mistakes, and so that's important to recognize that too. But I think the main thing is like just that I'm just a person like anyone else. Like I'm a musician, I'm an artist. There's like things about me that have absolutely nothing to do with NPD, and like I should be seen like any other person, because that's like that's what I need, is to be accepted and seen as a person, and I'm not seen as a narcissist. Like I need to be seen as a full person and accepted for that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I totally agree with you.
Mhm.
Is there any more you want to say, or shall we leave it there?
I think that's a pretty good note to end it on.
I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you for watching. Check out NPD April on YouTube and Instagram. I'll put the link in the description.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Leave a comment, hit the like, subscribe. I look forward to seeing you next time. In the meantime, take good care.